Langford.
Present.
James Matt. James Steele.
Yep.
Tom McDonald.
Here.
Mike Dawson.
I'm here.
Jim Molitor.
Here.
Jennifer Finley.
Here.
Len Two Teeth.
I'm here.
Danielle Matt.
Carol, would you start us with a prayer this morning, please? Please. Carol. We have minutes from, is it the 13th?
Thank you. I noticed in the minutes Abby needed a copy of the resolution. Were we able to get that to her? Sure if we have or not.
Have you got that yet, Abby?
Yes, I did get it, so I'm going to try to get it processed today. So I'll put it in the minutes.
Thank you, Abby. Approve the minutes. Corrections. Second by Tom. All in favor? Jennifer and Lynn. Six, 4, and 3, I don't know. Out of the room. Where's Lynn? Oh, Lynn's, okay. 7, 4. 2 out of the, thanks, James.
I approve, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, James. Bing. 8, 4, and Jennifer out of the room. Yeah. Motion by Martin to approve the agenda. Any additions? We have one walk-in. The agenda. Taken by Tom, all in favor? Bing. Bing's 4, Lynn, Jennifer? 4, Jennifer, and there's Lynn.
They want to see our show right on the Otter State Tour website.
We'll go to our walk-in if Joe Butterfly is available. Out of the room. I know. Hey, Jennifer. Positive for the minutes and the, okay. Jennifer is for the minutes and for the agenda. Blue hand this. When did this come in, Jay Blue? For the walk-in will need legal advice, basically. But yeah, I agree. If he's up there, we'll just proceed with our agenda. Kobe, welcome. I hope the drive was okay. And then just push the button under talk or above talk there. There you go. Welcome.
Hello, Chairman Dolson and Commissioners. My name is Kobe Gerke. I'm the Executive Director of the Flathead Lakers. We're a 501c3 nonprofit group based out of Polson. We do work all across the Flathead watershed, working to protect clean water, healthy ecosystems, and quality of life here in both Lake County and Flathead County. I'm here today to request your support with some grant support letters for funding we're pursuing for a project to protect clean water and reduce a public health nuisance at Betcher Park. We're working with the city of Polson, and we would like to work with CSKT on a project that would directly address runoff pollution from the golf course and from Highway 93 that all drains into the lake very near the swimming dock at Betcher Park. We have water quality data testing that we've been doing for about 4 years that shows that Betcher Park in the summer months exceeds safe thresholds for E. coli bacteria. That E. coli bacteria is a pretty good indicator of the presence of swimmer's itch, which is a rash that is spread through nematodes and flukes. Anyway, our project would take place both at Betcher Park and at the Polson Bay Golf Course, and it would be to retain runoff waters before they enter the lake and cause pollution and nutrient loading in the lake, and thus adversely affect swimmers in the summer's month. So the full scale of the project would be to plant what we call shoreline buffer zones, native plants that with deep roots that uptake pollutants in the soils before they can enter the lake, as well as establishing a retention pond on the golf course property to let all of those pollutants settle in that pond before they exit into the lake via a meandering channel. The way that we plan to fund this is through a combination of federal, state, and private grants. And those are the support letters that I have presented to you as drafts. Those are for groups like the Western Montana Conservation Commission, the EPA Region 8 Environmental Justice Grants, the Montana Department of Environmental Quality Non-Point Pollution Grants, and private entities like the High Stakes and Tracy Foundations. We also hope to work with CSKT, particularly the Natural Resource Division, to procure the native plants from the nursery that they run and to get their technical expertise and guidance in designing and building some of these project features. The other thing that I came to speak with you about today is just to give you an update on a project that we're already in partnership with CSKT's Natural Resource Division in. It is a swimmer's itch reduction project. The tribes will be building facilities at public access points around Flathead Lake, facilities such as showers, changing stations, things like that. And the Flathead Lakers will be doing water quality testing and then education and outreach to the public to let people know when the presence of swimmer's itch is likely at these swim beaches, and letting them know how they can prevent themselves from contracting swimmer's itch. So we're already in partnership there. There's been a little bit of a delay in us hiring for that position because of things happening at the federal administration level. So we hope to have clarity on that next week and be able to move forward quickly.
Well, thank you. Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Kobe, thanks for coming in. It's been a pleasure working with you. I know you're, 6 months in?
Yes, sir.
And yeah, it's been good, kind of getting to know you a little bit, having you get the lay of the land, and I appreciate this effort. I never let my kids go to the swim down there, golf course, because when I was a kid, it was bad then. So thank you for this effort. And then, yeah, I appreciate are you guys helping with the showers out at Elmo State Park there as well?
That will be the Natural Resource Division building the showers and changing facilities. We'll be doing the education signboards and public outreach and education.
I'd make the motion well, I'd like to have legal look at these first, and with their concurrence, approve them, these letters.
Yeah, thank you. Good to meet you, sir. Strong supporter of Lakers and everything Lakers have done, and having them as an ally with us in our effort to preserve Flathead Lake is one of the best watersheds in North America. Where is the pond going to be built, and where is this buffer at? Is this on the east side of the course, or is it over by the existing pond on the west side?
The retention pond that we're talking about will be below the golf course maintenance shops. So just downslope to the east side of the facilities at Betcher Park. So,
is there any testing from the outflow of the one pond over on the west side?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is there any testing out on the end of the point, the drive that goes out farther? The last house on the very end has its own causeway. There's actually an outlet there also.
Yeah, what is that, Kings Point? I don't think.
No, it's just out there at the end of the golf course.
Okay, I don't believe we've historically tested there. We've tried to focus on the public access swim beaches.
There's another outlet right at the S&K Marina.
Right.
There's stormwater comes out there, and then there's we try to do the same thing on at least one drainage area, at least in the Salish Point project, but there's a major storm drain right at Salish Point also that we couldn't do anything with. It's massive. That goes into right where the old boat ramp used to be that we closed off and did away with. It would be on the east side of Salish Point, or the west side of Salish Point. It's one of the largest storm drains in the city. And then of course there's some right at Riverside Park also. So I applaud you. I mean, these things we looked at trying to deal with stormwater runoff, trying to clear that up and put in these, buffer zones and filter natural filters. If you ever get a chance to go to Sandpoint, Idaho, in Sandpoint on Lake Ponderay, they've done some pretty amazing stuff there with trying to just buffer and having stages where the water gets filtered before it gets into the lake. We were trying to replicate that model.
Yeah, I know the Lakers have historically been involved in several buffer zones around the lake. It's been a bit of fits and starts, and it's always a challenge to get private property owners to see the value in doing so versus having a green lawn right up to the shoreline.
it's stormwater that's really so super bad. Yeah, just getting people not to fertilize their lawns up to the edge of the lake is a big win.
Yes.
But the stormwater stuff is a real issue for Polson. And there's only, yeah, we tried to do one there in a green space by the restroom at Riverside or Sacagawea Park. That's a buffer we put in there. And then we did a French drain filter all along the runoff on the parking lots right there at Salish Point. It's right now there used to be big rocks on it, and now they put up a little fence, but all along the green space lawn on that road, it's actually a gravel filter, and so all the stormwater has to go through that entire lawn underneath before it gets to the lake. That's the kind of stuff that's pretty cool. But yeah, I applaud you, and I support the measure.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Got a motion by Martin to support the letters and a second by Tom. All in favor?
Much.
Take a look and get the letters out.
Yeah. I hope the next time I'm here, I'm reporting on progress.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Be safe. Morning. Executive.
It could be open, precedent, some of that's gonna be set precedent for all the tribal contractors.
If you have a lot of individual names in it, I would recommend executive, but if it's just general,
just me,
okay.
if I'm gonna
We'll stay open.
hopefully I get some representation as a tribe from the people, because not sure if George is on the same page. But I was in lands, that's where I was at. The building the land that's on the buildings over at MVP on Round View, they're trying to say it's a federal building. So if we own the land, I'm sure we might own the building too. So it's tribal land or tribal buildings. I was constructing on that building on the roof, and OSHA came clear from Highway 93 headed southbound and spotted me on the roof. And then apparently came all the way back, block and a half, turned around, came back and he was gonna violate me. Then I called IP or Indian Preference, and then I talked to the FIP guy, Eric, and he said the same thing, that they were trespassing, they're on tribal land, tribal trust property, working on a tribal building. And that's when he didn't get any documentation from my company or anything. And he said, just pay it like a traffic ticket and it'll go away in 5 years. But according to Eric, he's been with the BIA for several years, like Moran has. So he's been all over different reservations. So he's dealt with building and OSHA violations. So he kind of knew, because I went to Shane, and then Shane said, well, Eric knows more about that than he does. So that's where we're at. So I called Eric, and that's what he told that guy the same thing, that he was trespassing and private contractor. So this guy basically looked like you. He's just a white guy from Billings, saying he's coming from Whitefish, doing the same fall violation. all hazard violation. So in the long run, he says that he's gonna probably send this certified mail. I'll have to sign for it, this fine, and it never came certified. I just got this in the mail last Saturday in my mailbox. And they're trying to violate me on 2 counts for like almost $2,200 a piece. And then they want to round it down and say, well, if you pay this one fine of 25, almost 2,600, we'll just call it as one violation. But as a tribal contractor, and that's who I told him, I was a tribal contractor. Apparently, like, he didn't see my braid, and so he's, well, you're a private contractor working on, doesn't matter, you're working on a tribal land or tribal trust land, or you're still a private contractor. George will have the information tomorrow morning. He said that shows that it's tribal land. He says he doesn't know about the buildings, but I'm pretty sure it'd be tribal buildings or tribal land too. And they're just leasing it. And just from the research I've done, it would still fall under the Sovereignty Act, as where the tribal law would come into effect, because the leasee has to take care of the property they're leasing from us. Doesn't matter if it's FIP or BIA or me. If I'm leasing it, I have to upkeep it. And that's what they were doing when I bid the project. I bid it material and all, and then they made me bring it down to just a labor bid. And that's all I put in was a labor bid, because if it went over 10,000, then it goes through the BIA channels in Oregon, and then it gets all tied into this OSHA stuff, I suppose. With it, they're saying they're trying to make something precedent with the tribal contractor, that once it opens the doors to me, then it opens the doors to the whole reservation on all the tribal contractors.
Do you have any insight, Dan, into where OSHA applies and where OSHA doesn't apply? It looks like we have tribal property, and question of the building is tribal or whether it's federal. And then the contract is with the BIA, right?
The contract with FIP, yep.
With the BIA. And is OSHA got jurisdiction in those instances?
Yeah, that's something I would need to look into, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, but if there's federal funds involved, it's a possibility.
Need to know where the money's coming from?
Correct. And if we can get a copy of the violation letter too, we can look into that, so.
Yeah, and that's where Eric was trying to say the same thing, is that they're trying to like come at me. So then if they win this, then they'll just open the doors for all the tribal contractors on this reservation. Because the secretary think that it's a federal building, and that I'm pretty sure it's just a tribal building. When we bought it, we bought the whole property or traded it, whatever we did. So it's,
well, that'll be one question of whether the building plays a part of it or whether the actual money plays a part of it. So, yeah, if you can get the information to Dan. Here can answer that question until he takes a look.
yeah, I was advised to go see Mike Wheeler, but he's not in right now. He kind of MVP, and he kind of knows a little more.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, when those transfers occurred, the buildings came with it, just like the Mission Valley Power building we tore down in Polson. Yeah, so the issue would be probably the funding stream, as Dan suggested. So a lot of times we accept federal grants or funding, and OSHA or David Bacon wages, those kind of things are part of you accept that when you accept the award. I don't know what pile of money this came from, Eric was using, but yeah, it's a FIP contract to a contractor who happens to be a tribal member.
Okay.
And then, but the building happens to be probably, as Joe says correctly, tribally owned.
Yeah, and I believe that's, if it's Ronan property, Mr. Vice Chair, I believe that's leased back
I'm not
to
sure
them from the tribes at this point.
I'm not sure if there's actually a lease.
Okay, well, I know
that's
they're working with the Lands Department on one a number of years ago, whether that came to
Yeah.
fruition. Good question.
That's what George will have tomorrow. Doesn't know about the lease. He goes, there should be a lease in place, but he's not too sure yet. He'll have that information in the morning.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's all even relevant in this particular case, but it's, I think it's I think Dan pointed to it right away. It's following the money and whatever strings were attached to the money. And if Eric was negligent on his clarity to you, what you needed to follow, you know, I don't know how we deal with that.
Yeah, I suppose that's what I told Eric this morning, because he's like, you need to withdraw or retire or get fired. So he's taking the early withdrawal or early retirement. He's only gonna be here till next week, but I told him the same, that because you're FIP, that they're probably after FIP more than they are me. So hopefully it just stays away from the contractors, because if it opens the doors, that's all I'm afraid of. I mean, it's not like I got the money. Once this fine isn't paid by next week, then it starts accruing interest every day, like 6%.
Sure. One thing Joe mentioned to me on the phone was his notice correctly done per the inspector and OSHA requirements? And it may not have been done correctly.
Oh, yeah, correct, because on this form, it talks about how they have to address the situation promptly. And that would be like posting something on the building or flagging it off. It doesn't matter, counting the holidays, national holidays and weekends, that it has to be posted within so many days. And so this was October 8th. And then Eric came the following 2 days later, and I was almost done with the main part of the roof. And he never said nothing that there was anything posted on the building. And so then at the same time, if there was nothing ever posted, then why are they still attacking the company if they're trying to get FIP, I guess? To where they can't bother the contractors, and that's even better.
And to Dan and Mike and get the question answered, and then figure out if OSHA was negligent and how they handled you.
Yeah, because
Comes out
then
of that.
IP did call, I did contact IP, and they said they can't give out my information to them only if I allow them to, and then they said they haven't been contacted by OSHA, so.
Thank you, Joe. Hinshaw. Linda Ellen Hinshaw. Everybody?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Tribal Council. Are you ready for MDT's update?
We are.
All right. I'll invite them to come up, and they can all sit at the table here. And okay, we can get started here.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Thanks for having us again. I think most of you probably know me. I'm Bob Bozen, District Administrator with the Department of Transportation. And we're here today to talk about a couple different subjects. The first one is I'm going to turn over to Beth Kappas, who's sitting to my right. And it's kind of an update on where we are with the Post Creek Hill project.
Yeah, so as you know, we've been working through project development on US 93 improvements in the Post Creek area. That project is currently working through design. MDT's kind of hitting a couple of big milestones. We just are publishing our scope of work report that sort of is a written definition of the improvements that will occur in that area. We're also considering a number of different alternatives for managing traffic during construction. So that's kind of a big ongoing effort and discussion at this point in time. I think Bob and John are going to be meeting with landowners in the near future just to kind of talk about what some of the options are and what that could look like during construction. We are also on site right now doing some geotechnical investigation work to just better understand the soil conditions and the condition of the pressurized aquifer that'll help inform our foundation design for the new bridge that will be there at Post Creek. We also have a meeting coming up with the CSKT Natural Resources Group on Wednesday to just work through an update on where we're at with design and also just get some continued feedback on some of the what we need from a wildlife standpoint and a stream resource standpoint at a few places throughout the project limits. And then I think we're also looking at some of the traffic study and intersection improvements throughout the project limits on Post Creek. At this point in time, we do have a traffic study that assesses the intersection needs at United Methodist Church and also Fort Kona. And I think while our preliminary analysis doesn't necessarily warrant the turn lane at those locations, we would like to include that just as a benefit to our project neighbors, and then also to kind of mitigate the safety concerns of having a climbing lane for trucks, but then also allowing for that turning lane so that cars who are decelerating can get out of the passing lane, basically, that will be constructed with the project. Did you want to talk more about that, Bob?
Excuse me. Yeah, so just to make sure everybody understands, what we're talking about is when you leave, when you're coming up the hill, up the Post Creek Hill, headed northbound, currently, as everybody knows, right as you get to the crest of the hill is where the Methodist Church is, off on the west side or the left-hand side. This project, a large portion of it is building a climbing lane for climbing up the hill, so we'll have 2 lanes. Without building a turn lane in that area, basically we're going to have slow-moving vehicles in the right-hand lane, the higher speed vehicles in the left-hand lane, and then we have somebody in the left-hand lane that wants to go to church and they turn the signal on and slow down. So we feel that while the numbers don't indicate from a pure traffic standpoint, traffic engineering analysis standpoint, that a left turn lane is needed, we feel that one is a key safety component, which is one of the driving factors of this project. So we do plan to add a left turn lane into the church. One thing that we're still trying to consider would be a southbound left turn lane into Fort Kona, whether or not we're trying to get an understanding of how much traffic that really sees that are people headed southbound making that left-hand turn. To extend that down, that widened roadway section down to Fort Kona, we're looking at over 6 figures to add that additional turn lane in there. So we want to make sure we get it right, but we also want to make sure that we're spending the money wisely that we do have. So we're still still going through some analysis of that, and I am kind of curious if recognizing that I've been in my role for about 6 years, but I don't know of any promises or commitments that were made before I got into the role. So we're looking back into that as well. So I am kind of curious the thoughts of the council on that. And we're, like I say, we will be looking into more about doing a left turn lane into Fort Kona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On February the 4th, I was headed to council and I got rear-ended at the construction site. My truck got totaled. Wasn't any U-Haul's fault, and I don't think it was any construction's fault. There were signs for days. The gentleman was not paying attention. I saw him in my rear view mirror. Wham. That was, as soon as I seen him, wham, was that quick. So yeah, my beloved Ram Dodge is now in the eternal salvage yard of all busted up vehicles. So I was wondering, right where I still call it the 44 bar.
Yep.
I never remember what the name is now, but the 44, they got that center turn lane through there. Is there any way to think about at least extending it? I don't know, maybe, to Hunts or even across a bridge to the two roads there, Post Creek and the other road across. I know probably not feasible to do it all the way up the hill, but maybe even just extending it, I don't know, over the bridge maybe, because we've got that one house there on the left, on the west side,
Yep.
right across. They're always struggling getting in and out of there, but there's all them little turns in there. You got Hunt's Timbers right there. You've got the intersection across the bridge of the house there. But definitely, I think having a turn lane at the church is probably a good idea, especially coming up on that hill.
Right.
Wintertime, all that kind of thing. I remember a number of years ago, back in the 90s, they had that pedal bike crew going through there, and one of the bikers got smucked out right in there, unfortunately. But I think anything we can do to improve it is warranted. And the other thing I'm concerned about, we've got this infrastructure. Do we have the infrastructure money in the bank? Okay, because I'm seeing the current administration is just, if it has Biden's name on it, oh, well, we're not going to give it to you, or we're going to slow walk it, or we're going to do those kind of stupid things. So I'm going to stop there because I'll just start ranting and raving about the idiocy that's now occupied the White House. Hopefully, I pray none of you voted for that person. If you did, please rethink that. The man's a nut. He's crazy. I'll leave it there.
Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At least my reflection for the United Church, is I try to talk them out of placing a church there. Because it's a beautiful setting, beautiful spot, but, line of sight's a challenge. The potential for a passing lane through this betterment of the Highway 93, the People's Way, that was a consideration. So, I hate to say it, but I think even if you put in a turning lane in that site, there's still going to be with people driving super fast in a passing lane because people are crazy now. They drive 80 on. They'll be going 85 up Post Creek Hill with the passing lane. And then just stuff happens. I just really worry about anybody, even with a dedicated lane to make a left turn into that church. If you're heading north, I think there's going to be issues. But I rather have people always turn to the right and not cross traffic. That's the way we should be designing everything on a highway that you have this kind of speed, and especially in a situation where you have passing occurring, legal passing of people going fast intentionally. I think it's a problem. I think it'd be better for me. I mean, I turned into like the Post Creek Fort Kona thing. That's part of a lot of us family history and legacy. So I go in there a lot, and I'll go down and make a turn. I won't make a left turn there. You know, because it's crazy. You know, sometimes you just can't make a cross traffic turn on Highway 93 on any of these county roads or residential sites, and it's just one of those things of doing business. So here's what I could say about a church, and a little different than Fort Connor, is a church is locals, and they know the road issues. When they're going to church there on Sunday, they know if there's a problem, they're going to go down to 9-Pipe, they're going to swing around, come back, or they're going to approach that in a safe way. But you go to a recreation site or a place where people are not used to turning in, you have more of a problem with people, not knowing the traffic, not knowing the highway. And so I would actually argue that if you were to have a left turn lane, it's more appropriate for Fort Connor than it is the church, because that's a wide variety of visitors. And depending on how they run that, I'm not part of the Fort Connor Historical Society, but they have events there. They invite public schools there. Buses turn into there. Buses do not turn into the United Church. You don't have that kind of, tourist traffic going into it. So it would depend on the level of what's going on in Fort Connor. I'd be more concerned about the left turn bay for that, because you're not, and again, you're at the bottom of the hill. There's not a speeding lane. There's not a passing lane. So it's actually, it's probably a little bit more ideal of a situation. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Answer to the best of my ability the question about funding, and that is all of the discretionary grant funding that's taken place. It's definitely been in the news. People have been here, and so a lot of grants are being stopped, suspended. We did get word last week that the grants in Montana that we have are believed to be secure at this point, because they are the grants that we have in Montana, we're building infrastructure, much needed infrastructure. There aren't things that are questionable of need or intent. I mean, we're improving the infrastructure of Montana with all of our grants. So as of last week, we were told that originally it was only the grants that we had signed agreements in place with, but late last week we were told that as of late last week, it's believed that our grants our funding is solid with those grants. Now that could change at any moment, I guess, but right now we've been led to believe our other project in the area, the 9-Pipes and associated projects, we're still pushing ahead on that. I think that everybody's aware that a lot of these grants have an extremely tight timeline, and I was in here month or two ago, I believe, where we talked about the fact that with these grants, we need to make decisions and move forward just because of the aggressive timelines to get, if the federal government's given us money to build infrastructure, they want to see infrastructure get built. They don't want to get a lot of reports about ongoing meetings and discussions. They want to see how product's going to hit the ground. So happy to say that at this point, we're still moving forward with all the projects in the area.
Good, James.
Yeah, follow up, Mr. Chair. And the other thing that concerns me in this construction is anything that comes from Canada or Mexico is going to be going up. So all of the prices you all have figured out, if anything comes from Canada, better put a markup on it, whatever that might be, any kind of materials, any kind of whatever. Unfortunately, the president's decided to attack our best friends. And, I'm reading an article this morning, Alabama's going to take a big hit on their car industry. So it's just a blatant attack on not other countries, it's on us. Us are going to be paying for it. You all are going to be paying for it, trying to construct this roadway that we need, these infrastructure projects. But on not thinking, oh, wait, that's going to cost, if there's any kind of material that you need from Canada, it's going up. So buy your Crown Royal now. Just kidding.
Mr. Chairman, that's a great point. One thing where we are fairly still comfortable with our pricing is because anytime we've been building highway projects for the last several years, we have the Buy America clause. So we have to buy products that are you know, the metal has to be melted and smelted in the US. Everything has to be sourced within the US. So hopefully it may drive costs up just because there's going to be more competition for things made in America versus where a lot of people are buying stuff. We're not sure what that looks like completely, but most of our, you know, like all of our metal goods and stuff that we're incorporating are going to be US made already. So hopefully our estimate is still going to be solid so we can proceed as planned.
If you need new heavy equipment though, I mean, it's gonna hit one way or the other. I mean, you might have us good on that part, and I appreciate you bringing that up, but heavy equipment, you know, you go look at a project, not all the projects say John Deere or, you know, Cat. And then if it does, John Deere makes stuff in Mexico or Canada. So it's gonna hit one way or another. It's just, there's no escaping it. The US is not like 1940s where we built everything. We've exported everything, and things that we've imported are still going to get, you know, they're going to get hit one way or another. So I appreciate the comment, but it's going to impact somehow. You're just no avoiding it. If we were a 1940s and 50s market like we used to be, it'd be different, but we're not. We're too integrated globally. And the guy in the White House doesn't seem to understand that, nor does his crazy man, Elon Musk, who's not a citizen of the United States, is meddling in everything, all of our personal information. It's not hearsay, it's fact. He's let him loose. So
just one other footnote about the United Methodist Church. Those Methodist churches were all in decline and they couldn't hold their facilities together. So they went and got together and tried to pick a location. The super majority of the folks that visit that church are from Charlo, Ronan, and Pablo. My real extreme minority are coming from the south heading north, just so you know.
Mr. Chairman, one other comment just to that may be of interest is the fact I believe work started this week, but I don't know if we've confirmed it with the pumping, and I just wanted to offer the opportunity while you have us here. I'm not sure if everybody's aware of what that means and what's going on out there. So, in the interest of time, we can skip that, or if you want more information, we can give you, John can have an update on what's happening out there. Oh, Ellen has made it. Ellen can give an update maybe on what's going on out there right now for, it isn't the best time of the year to have a lane closed out there, but again, going back to those tight time constraints, the exploration that's being done right now is critical to continue to meet the deadlines of the project. So I don't know if you want an update on what the intent is out there, or if you're good with what we've been told before.
I would like to hear it. Sure. Go ahead, Ellen.
Good morning. Sorry
Good morning.
for the delay this morning. So the drillers are planning to be on site with their big rigs starting next week. So the Kiewit's team has been getting some of those drill pads ready and just setting everything up for when the drillers come. So they're planning on mobbing next Monday, the 24th, I think all weather dependent. We don't want to have them bring their big rigs out with this weather still. So they'll take a couple days to get mobilized, get their equipment set up, and then they're going to start drilling some of those depressurization wells. They'll go into the aquifer and they'll start placing some of the geotechnical devices to start determining where the aquifer is at, what are the pressures at it, and just starting to get some of that data to help guide the bridge design. They're anticipating about 3 weeks of work once the drillers get started, and then they'll move back off site, keeping an eye on the traffic control. Of course, if we have some storms coming in, they'll be able to pull everything off the roads and open up both lanes as they go. I believe there is single lane traffic once they do have those drill rigs on there, just to make sure everyone is moving around the drill rigs and there's no safety concerns. But 3 weeks of the single lane, weather dependent.
Thank you. I know that in this Mud Creek aquifer here, that there is seasonal timeframe pressure differentials because of the snow runoff, et cetera, and it's lag, there's lag time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the way it is with Post Creek, but given the fact that we had a ranch just upstream from there and we had a lot of springs and artesians there, I would think that's similar to Mud Creek because that's what you have on the Mud Creek thing. So I don't know what you sample now would be reflective of what it occurs in, say, August.
Yeah, I think as we continue through, I think it would be reasonable to assume that there will be seasonal. And I think they were kind of hoping for this winter to determine like the best case scenario when it's its lowest, what are the pressures that they're going to have to be concerned about so that they can start planning through. Once the wells are installed, they'll be able to leave them installed until construction. So if there is big fluctuations, those wells will be out there for them to monitor and to move through up until construction. So they'll be able to keep an eye on any changes as spring runoff comes through and if it does peter off back into the fall. Hopefully once we kind of get an idea of what the aquifer is doing, that'll help like set our construction schedule as well. If it is better to be placing some of the drilled shafts, say in the fall or early winter rather than high runoff during spring.
Yeah, the groundwater surge in the Mud Creek aquifer seemed to be in August.
Okay.
It's just that kind of a lag time.
Good to know.
So there was like buildings at the college being flooded in July and August. It's similar to like this from 96, 95, that big snow year. So it's kind of weird, you know, it's not the surface runoff. It's got a 6-month delay time.
Mr. Chairman, Beth has some updates, I believe, for the Post Creek or for the Nine Pipes project as well.
So yeah, moving north on US 93 to the Nine Pipe area, we're getting underway with project development for that project. Again, that's going to include a couple miles of improvement there from Eagle Pass Trail all the way up to Brook Lane in the north. And MDT is currently tracking that as 3 separate projects. So I think you'll see 3 names thrown around a lot with those improvements, but it is being designed and constructed under a single contract. We just made it through procurement for that project and selected a design and construction team that will be responsible for the engineering and construction of that project. The team that we selected includes Sun Schellinger as a joint venture, and they are teamed with Dow Jacobs and DJNA for engineering services on that project. MDT is continuing survey on site right now, so you've probably seen our people in the area collecting just engineering field data to support the design effort for that project. A couple of those segments in that stretch of highway are really starting out at like 0% design. So we've got a lot of ground to make up in the coming months. And I think we're looking as we get our contract executed with the design and construction team, we'll be looking to have a larger kickoff meeting with Scott and Whisper and their teams and the Natural Resources Group, just to kind of start talking about what the scope of the project will entail. As a reminder, that project includes a fairly large bridge at Crow Creek, sort of in the north end of the project. There'll also be 2 bridges constructed where the highway intersects the larger Kettle Ponds. So right now that's just, you know, almost like a causeway. There'll be bridges installed there. And then we also, towards the south end of the project, will be constructing a wildlife overpass. And I think where we really need a lot of input on, you know, how we balance all the design criteria for that project will definitely be at those major structures, specifically the wildlife overpass and Crow Creek. So we'll be definitely workshopping, you know, some of our constraints and opportunities there in the near future. We have Big Sky Public Involvement under contract for public involvement services on that project, and some of that will be picking up, and we're going to have a web page available. So if you hear folks with questions or you yourself, you know, need a landing spot for some of the project information, that'll be online soon. And then I guess kind of an update on the funding arrangements for that project. We do have two discretionary grants, one under the Neighborhood Access and Equity Program, and then one under the Wildlife Crossing Pilot Program. We do have signed agreements for both of those grant programs. However, we've only obligated PE funds. So that means we've just obtained the funds for engineering at this point in time. So we still, have to seek obligation approval from FHWA for the bulk of that funding when we get closer to construction.
Well, I think that is it from, unless there's other questions about the construction in the area. And just one point of clarification I want to make everybody understands. The last project Beth was talking about, the construction team is two companies, Sunt, who is a team from Arizona, but they have partnered with Schillinger Construction out of Columbia Falls. So that's the joint venture Beth was talking about. So it's a firm that I think everybody is well familiar with. Schillinger has done a lot of work. They're one of our great local contractors. So we're really excited to have that project with a local contractor. That concludes this portion of the MDO.
One more thing that we have here. As our projects continue forward, Joan had set up a monthly update for the project. As these two projects start kicking off, MDT proposes moving those to a quarterly schedule and then reconvening the TDC Technical Design Committee and the Project Oversight Group, POG, as called out in the MOU, just to make sure that we have decision makers and having decisions run through these official management groups as we continue moving forward. We're kind of shooting for an early March for our first reconvening of the TDC and POG and kind of getting everyone back onto a schedule as we keep moving forward with those and having a bit more project specific questions discussed and answered at those rather than the overall project update meetings that Joan has been running, just to kind of make sure that the projects on these two, as we are hitting critical milestones, are being addressed fairly frequently.
Thank you, Ellen.
Questions about that?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one real quick question. That is part of the POG group, as spelled out in the original documents. It's the individual to represent CSKT is someone from the tribal, the legal office. A staff attorney is who was on there historically. I'm not sure how to find out who the right person is or how to go about, because we set aside the TDC and the POG for a while because we didn't have projects moving forward, but I felt it was important to get back into that formal meeting process as Ellen described. So not sure if maybe Scott can get that information for us or where the best place to get that information is, but we need to make sure we got the right individual on there to represent CSKT.
Any thoughts? I believe that we can work through Scott to do that.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Bob, and everybody.
So, and I will stay right where I am. Whoever's giving me a ride, don't leave me.
Musical chair?
Yeah, I will get the correct person for the POG group meetings.
Okay.
There. Good thing. I got it. All right, Mr. Chairman, Council, I am happy to say that with me today is the staff that actually can give this presentation much better than what I can. And last week we gave this presentation to a group down in Lolo, and they were not as fortunate as you because they were stuck with Joel and I giving this. So today Sarah with RPA is going to talk about the Polson to Summers corridor study that we've done. And we've got Jackson down on the end joining us as well. So Jackson's the project manager for this project. I believe everybody knows Joel Boucher, our pre-construction engineer that works with me up in Kalispell office and kind of keeps everything on track. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Sarah. She can speak much better to it than what I can. I made it through it, but you're going to get a way better presentation, I am certain.
Thank you, Bob, and good morning. Just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to meet with the Tribal Council today. We wanted to provide an update on the US 93 Polson to Summers corridor study. We do have a brief presentation, so I'll just be flipping through these slides here as we talk. We'll talk a little bit about the corridor study process and the study area. That should be just a reminder for everyone.
You have to share that.
Oh, I have to share. Let's see, how do I do that?
The Zoom link and it should give you the button for sharing.
Let me know if you're able to view that.
There.
Good, okay, thank you. Appreciate that. So I'll quickly step through the study process and the study area. New information that we wanted to share with the council today would be our needs and objectives for the study, and then looking at some potential improvement options that we've identified. And we're excited to share these with you today, and we'll be looking for input on these proposals. So just as a reminder, in terms of the corridor study, the last time we met with the Tribal Council was back in September 2024, and we'd mentioned that MDT is conducting this study. And basically it's to understand the needs in the corridor before developing and constructing an individual project. So this is an early process. MDT, of course, would follow all of the project development and construction steps if a project does move forward. But right now we're focused on this planning stage that we've got started right here. We are planning to wrap that up this spring. So we're nearing the end of this process, and excited to share an update with you today. So in terms of our study area, you can view the map on the right-hand side of the slide here. Just as a reminder, we are focused on the portion between Polson and Summers. That southern portion is within the Flathead Reservation that we've shaded in brown. The study corridor does overlap both with Lake and Flathead counties, and of course passes through a number of communities along the western shore of Flathead Lake. That new since the last time that we had met with the Tribal Council was our needs and objectives, and we've identified two primary needs for this corridor. First, we're looking to improve safety, and we'll do that by looking to reduce fatalities and serious injuries, animal vehicle conflicts, roadside hazards, and then other conflicts with vehicles. And secondly, we also are looking to improve corridor operations by accommodating existing and future travel demands, maintaining reasonable access to adjacent properties, and then also improving pedestrian and bicycle mobility and accessibility in the corridor. At the bottom of the screen, we've listed out some additional considerations, and these are things that can influence or constrain potential improvements in the corridor. So the study definitely recognizes the importance of minimizing impacts to environmental resources, social and cultural resources, looking at transportation accessibility for all different types of modes. Another really important consideration is just the construction feasibility and the types of impacts with that. Local, tribal, state, federal interests are all a very important component of this as well. So again, we're excited to have the tribes as a partner in this process. We'll also be thinking about things like the context and the function and the use of the corridor, Last couple of bullets there, funding availability always is important. We have not identified any funding for any improvements in this corridor. So it's more of a vision for MDT to use as a guide as funding does become available. And then lastly, that last bullet is also thinking about the maintenance operations and responsibilities and costs associated with any of these improvements would also need to be taken into consideration. So that's a quick overview of our needs and objectives. From there, we have started to identify a set of improvement options to address those needs. And we've split this out into 3 different types of improvements. First, what we're calling spot improvements. So these are locations where there might be just one spot where we're trying to address a corridor-wide improvement that might occur in multiple locations throughout our study corridor. And then lastly, we've identified some policy improvements as well. I won't step through all of these, but I did want to point out a couple, especially on the reservation on the southern portion of our corridor. Yes, was there a question? Yes.
Well, could you go back to that last slide?
Of course, you bet.
Because it's a classic example of the previous presentation about Post Creek Hill. So this is a multi-lane going south. And then it necks down to 1 lane. So people are trying to pass and merge. And just on the other side of that hill, there's a left turn bay. And people abuse that and go into that left turn bay. And I don't know why there's not a lot of accidents there, but that's a classic example of a safety hazard where they're merging when you neck down from a passing lane. And then you have provide additional space for a left turn bay right there to turn into Summers proper. That's a good example. Sorry, I had to say that.
Yes, thank you so much for pointing that out. So for everyone, this is the intersection at the very northern end of our corridor, right at the Montana 82 intersection there. And it is definitely a location that we're looking at with this study. We've had a lot of similar comments about the challenges in that spot. So when I get to the slide about some of these improvements, I'll point that one out. Thank you for noting that. And let's see, I think actually that you can see it, if you can see my cursor there, I'm just pointing out that location. That is one of the spots that we had identified for improvements, was that Montana 82 intersection at the very northern end of our corridor. So thank you again for noting that. We've got a number of other spot improvements. So these are just called out with our green text boxes here with the location. And basically, we're trying to enhance safety, traffic operations, and access, so meeting those needs and objectives at specific locations along the corridor. And thought I would just point out a couple of these on the reservations. So starting out at the southern end of our corridor, the jetty location, this is a spot where we identified the potential to flatten some of the roadside grade and assess the passing zone in that location as well. There's a lot of speeding and some visibility issues that could be addressed. As we get into the Big Arm area, so this is our second improvement area, we're proposing to construct a 2-way left turn lane. As I'm sure all of you are aware, there's lots of driveways intersecting the highway in this area, so a lot of left turning movements, right turning movements as well. Just felt like a 2-way left turn lane could be appropriate in that location, and then also review the passing zones in that stretch. As we get into Elmo, we've got a couple of different improvements here. We've got some pedestrian improvements that we're proposing. So this would be installing what's called RRFBs, or rectangular rapid flashing beacons, just to alert drivers when a pedestrian is wanting to cross the roadway, so they have more visibility on that. And then some accessibility accommodations. And these improvements would be at Skookum Drive and Cemetery Road in Elmo. And then another location is the Montana 28 intersection. And we're looking at the potential for some type of traffic control there. It could be a traffic signal or a roundabout in the future as warranted, and then just making sure to accommodate business access. We've heard that there is potential or proposed development in that location for a fueling station and convenience store. So if that does move forward, then just looking to accommodate that access and make sure that traffic flows smoothly.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Good, James.
Yeah, I promise I won't go off on a rabbit trail. My question is to you is, when you've looked at the traditional intersection to the roundabout, what are the things that you've seen or your studies have seen, or you all have noticed, you know, you took this one intersection that you know was a problem in the regular way that we're used to the roundabout. What have you noticed or seen differently? I think I know what you're going to say, but I'd rather have you articulate it.
I could start and then I might turn it over to MDT too. So I would say there's a number of different types of traffic control that MDT considers at every intersection, and it's really a case-by-case basis, looking at what makes sense for that particular context and the traffic volumes and the turning movements and the safety issues at that spot. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Roundabouts can be very effective. They have some safety benefits if they're placed in the right spot, but they're not always appropriate. And sometimes a traffic signal might make more sense. So I'll let Bob or others from MDT.
Yeah, just add a little bit. Thank you for that. That makes complete sense to me. I think that, anyway, when I go to Seattle, I don't stop at Ellensburg. I stop at the next exit where the Love's gas station is, and there's a roundabout there. And for whatever reason, however it's designed there, just seems to be it's confusing to me when I get off of them. Like, why is this traffic circle more confusing than, you know, one somewhere else? It just makes sense. And I think that when you articulated it that way, it makes complete sense. Certain ones fit in certain places and not in others. So thank you.
Okay, sounds good.
Jennifer?
Yeah, one thing I've noticed about driving, because I recently drove home from Seattle too, is that I was so relieved when I got home because I know the roads here. And so even if they're covered with snow, I know where the turning lanes are. And I just thought, whenever it snows, people get stupid and they'll drive in lanes that are not, they'll drive in the wrong lane, going in the wrong direction. And I thought, no, I know not all of these people are not, some of these people are from here and they're knowingly driving in the wrong lane because it's all covered in snow. But some people are not from here, and driving through Washington and Idaho, I didn't know the roads. And so you can't see the arrows painted on the roads, and then they always wash off.
Yeah.
And so even if they were marked at one time, there comes a time at a certain point in the year where there's nothing on the road. And so signs really help when they have signs on the side of the road that indicate where the turning lane is or a passing lane, especially when the roads get covered in snow. I think those are very helpful for everyone, and just to remind people. I mean, even in Polson, I'm thinking of Polson, and when I used to live in Havre, there was a turning lane, and when it snowed, people would just drive down the turning lane like it was like a regular lane because it was covered in snow. Or I saw one person drive the turning lane in the wrong direction. So anyway, I just think when there's signs on the side of the road, that's always really helpful, just anticipating that whatever's painted there is going to get washed off or covered in snow at some point.
That's a great comment. Thank you. And I think just with today's winter conditions outside, we can see that on the ground. You're exactly right. And great comments. And it leads right into our next slide as we're talking about the corridor wide improvements. Signing and striping is absolutely one of the things that we identified with that as a recommendation.
Go ahead, Doug.
So I'll go back.
Thank you. Yeah, just, sorry, Sarah, just one comment about the roundabouts. I always joke with Bob about, doing the first roundabout up in Flathead County, like damn communist anyway. One of the things as a dabbling in planning and trying to, figure out traffic and stuff, it's always best to keep traffic moving. And so when I think about efficiency and other issues and carbon footprint and just ease of time, I favor a roundabout any day over a stoplight or a stop sign. So if there's a tie goes to roundabout. Anyway, I really think it's a good way to face intersections, especially if you're slowing down traffic anyway. But at times it can be a dramatic challenge for pedestrian issues. And so I'm really trying to find that sweet spot of where is a great roundabout with great fluid with pedestrian movement or bicycles. And I don't know if I've yet come across that one. But anyway, that's my bias. So if you make recommendations, I feel good about roundabouts.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and Mr. Vice Chairman, go check out the double roundabouts at the Van Buren exit in Missoula. It's got a heck of a bike path coming down out of the Rattlesnake, and it gets a tremendous volume of pedestrians in there. So,
yeah, I'll look at that one. I don't do Van Buren very often. Yeah.
It coming from where we do, that's not it's kind of one of those roads you just normally don't end up on unless you go there with intent.
Yeah, I've been on that quite a bit, and it just flows. It makes sense. The pedestrian, the bikes, and everything, and that just works when I get into there, and I'm fine. But that one over in Washington, off of a certain exit at Ellensburg, it's a weird. I don't know. I'm not an expert in it. I'm just a driver. But when I get to that one, I'm like, okay, what do I do? Which lane do I get in, and try to figure out how to get to the Love's gas station where everybody's crammed in there trying to get 5 cent cheaper gas there when I go over across the street and spend $6, $7, $8 on a cup of coffee.
First one I did up in Canada, I can't remember where it was, but I got stuck in the roundabout forever. I didn't know where to pull out, where am I going to go?
Great comments. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on our spot improvements before I move on?
Yeah, thank you. The other thing I was looking at a while back was I noticed in the US we adopted these certain colors for the road paint, and it goes to Jennifer's comment. Why can't we experiment in winter states with painting or striping on the roads? It's reflective or something that, I don't know. I noticed some of the European, Scandinavian countries have been experimenting with different colors to put on their roadway that makes sense for winter. And I'm like, we gotta think of something like that. Anyway, just ponderings.
Good. This is what I appreciate when there's like reflective bumps on lanes or the rumble strips. I mean, I used the rumble strips the other day coming back from Polson because you couldn't tell where in the heck the lanes were. And I knew that I was in my right lane when I could touch the rumble strips. I could feel that through the snowpack on the ice. So I knew I was in the right lane. And I did that all the time because I couldn't tell where I was. And people were all over the damn road. They were way over in the left, and they were, people were trying to pass. It was crazy. But yeah.
Great comments. Thank you. And actually those comments lead right into some of the other corridor-wide improvements that we've identified. So these are improvements that could apply in multiple locations throughout our study corridor. And just really appreciate the comments about the signing and the paint, the pavement markings, rumble strips. Those are exactly some of the lower cost measures that we identified for the corridor. And one thing, as we were studying and doing field reviews, we did some nighttime driving just to experience the corridor under dark conditions. And it is awfully dark. Of course, it's not lit for most of the corridor. And so looking at some higher visibility treatments, it could be more delineation, more paint and pavement markings as was suggested. So those are exactly the type of low cost measures that we're suggesting and including in the study. We also have some larger scale reconstruction type projects. So this might be things like shoulder widening in certain areas, wildlife accommodations. And on the map on the right-hand side, you can see the call outs on the locations where we've identified. So the shoulder widening is in several spots here in the southern portion of the corridor. Rumble strips again as well. They are in some places in the corridor, but they're inconsistent. So it would just be making sure that they're consistent throughout the entire corridor. And I think they were installed a time ago, but they've eroded over time. And so just making them fresh and new so that they're highly tactile again, we thought would be helpful. There are also a couple of locations where there are rockfall hazards that have been identified. So just mitigating some of those spots for safety reasons as well. And then we do also have a couple of locations where we identified the possibility for a new passing lane. As we know, there are limited opportunities in this corridor. It's constrained in a lot of spots, just with rock outcroppings and the lake. But there are some locations where we thought there might be enough room to install a new passing lane. So we've called those out as well. The other thing I wanted to point out in the top right-hand corner, we have some additional improvement options that are not illustrated in these maps. And one, this C10 is an important one. It's relating to cultural signage. We had a presentation with the Kootenai tribal elders last fall, and that was one that they really keyed in on and felt like it was really important with this corridor to install some cultural signage. And so it would be similar to what's in place between Evero and Paulson, and just labeling things like boundaries and communities, place names, maybe even some directional signage and interpretive signage, but helping travelers understand the history and the cultural significance of the corridor could really go a long way with that. And we're envisioning that that would be a partnership in close coordination with the CSKT and MDT to install the signage and make sure that the appropriate languages are reflected there. So I'll pause there for a minute and ask if there are any other questions on the corridor-wide improvements before we move on. Sounds good. So wanted to point out a couple of policy improvements that we've identified as well. The first one is access management. And our study is calling for implementation of an access management plan. It would be supplemental actually to this corridor study, and we're in process working on that. But the intent of that is to reduce conflicts with all the different driveways and approaches along the highway corridor. We're looking at ways to reduce those conflicts and maintain highway operations as development or redevelopment occurs with some of the parcels along the corridor. And so strategies might include things like either relocating or combining, maybe even eliminating certain duplicate accesses if there is alternate access, but just trying to minimize the number of conflicts that are located on the highway and spacing them appropriately. So that is in process and will be a supplement to this corridor study. A couple other policy improvements that we're suggesting, looking at some speed considerations. There have been some speed studies in this corridor. However, we were suggesting the possibility of maybe considering some nighttime or seasonal variations for speed, especially with the different wildlife activity in the corridor. There could be some value in looking at that. Possibly also some spot speed zones, maybe even in the Big Arm to Elmo area might be a good location for that. We had some suggestions about looking at transportation demand. So what's really common is that if people are commuting to work, they're oftentimes commuting in the morning and in the evening hours and kind of bunched up, and there's a lot of traffic all at once. And so if we can break that up a little bit, either if people can work different schedules, maybe work from home, use transit, bike and walk, there are different ways to adjust that travel demand. So we're not getting such peak travel in those morning and evening commute time periods.
Good, James.
Yeah, thank you. On that issue, it doesn't seem like it's been 15 something years ago when I was the chair. At that time, the gas was going way up. And so as a tribes, as a government, we try to accommodate that by moving to 410 week to keep folks not as many days on the road. And it wasn't intended to be perpetual, but it just stayed. We've stuck with that schedule for the most part. But, you know, the tribes, and it was the idea of there was daycare costs, there was fuel costs, there was a bunch of things going on at that time. And council passed that action. And, but, you know, so we do try to accommodate that. What days make sense to do that. So that's been, you know, since whatever, 06, 07, somewhere back then.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that comment. And I think the idea might be to share that information and encourage other employers to look at different types of work schedules as well. Thank you. The last policy improvement that we identified was relating to maintenance, and that's already been brought up a little bit just in terms of annual winter snow maintenance, but also annual restriping and pavement type maintenance. These are things that MDT already does, but just looking at ways to continue to improve and implement best practices with maintenance of the corridor.
Can I add one more, please? I'm sorry.
Yes, of course.
Chatty,
No, please.
Kathy today. I really appreciate you all, MDT, putting the green lights on the back of the snow plows. That just makes them, to me, makes a whole much more sense than the old traditional lights we've had on them. I mean, I can see, okay, I know that's a snow plow. The lights are going off, it's just easier to see that green light. So I think that's a great, whoever came up with that idea, give them an extra cookie or coffee or something, or group. Great idea, I think.
Thank you. That's a great comment. Okay, well, that brings us through the improvement options. The other couple of things that we wanted to mention, we are sharing these improvement options today with the tribal council, but we're also moving into a public outreach phase. And so we have posted information on our website, and there's a couple of different ways that folks can provide comments back to MDT on that. We do have a comment form on the right-hand side of the study webpage, and then we also have an interactive commenting map where I'm pointing my arrow here. And I'll flip to the next slide. So if you click on that interactive commenting map, it'll bring this up and it'll show you a map of those improvement option locations that I've just presented today. And you can pull any one of those up and then add a comment on those online as well. So we're encouraging folks to do that through our public outreach period. And this is our first presentation for this outreach push. Later today, we have public open house meeting in Polson at the library at 4:30 p.m. Tomorrow, we'll have another open house meeting at 4:30 at the Summers Fire Hall. And then lastly, on Thursday, we have a virtual meeting at noon. And if anyone is interested in that, you can just go to the study website and register for that online. So looking to share all of this information with the public and request feedback on that as well. Once we get through this push, then we'll be compiling all of the study information into a corridor study report along with that access management plan. We'll send that out for public review, so that will be available on the website, and we'll make sure to notify the tribal council when that's available. Once we consider all of the public comments that we receive, then we'll develop the final corridor study and access management plan. And then at that point, it will be in MDT's hands to use as a guide for future improvements. And one of the first steps, again, will be to identify funding for these improvements and to try to kind of break it up into manageable project sizes to move forward into project development and construction activities. So I think we've got just one more slide here relating to our study schedule. So as you can see with this, we're nearing the end, just the last couple of months here in our study schedule. So once we complete our outreach in February, then we'll be working on compiling that plan, making it available for public review, and then trying to wrap everything up by the end of May. And just wanted to leave our contact information, and then at the bottom there is our study website. Another way too, you can take a picture of that QR code and it'll take you right to the website as well. So just want to thank you all for the opportunity to present to Tribal Council today, and would be happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Any other questions? Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Again, Mr. Chairman, want to thank you. I do want to point out a few people that are with me again, just because, man, it's an exciting time for exciting, depending on who you ask. It's nerve-wracking as well. We've got a lot of pressure on us with some deadlines with a tremendous amount of money riding on them. So earlier, Beth Kappas was sitting up here, gave the first presentation, and then Ellen spoke and she gave a presentation. They're both part of our alternative contract delivery system, which was what we're using for these projects. But Matt Straub is our local alternative contract engineer. So if you get correspondence from Matt, or if something's going on and Matt ends up sitting here, I just wanted you not to be the first time you recognize him is when he's sitting here at the mic. So I just wanted to call Matt out. So again, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob, and everybody. Appreciate it. Yeah. And I know you guys know how to be safe out there.
Executive.
Letters, one basically extending the contract and the other one basic information about the meeting we had.
Yes.
Or either. Approve the letter extending the contract. Bing? And 7-4 and one out of the room. Second letter, the informational letter to the area director, the regional director, I guess. We're same vote, 7 and one other room.
Okay.
We're not doing. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Council. Good notes, good discussion, good ideas.
Deliver power to the people. Oh.
With that RLE thing, you know. Back with the RLE thing, you know, after you talk to him.
While it's on my mind, I think, I think we should talk to Rob about being the hub for all the donations that we do. Start researching that and compile a list, and I think we should publish it on our website. A lot of the donations that we give in land are worth a lot of money in today's market, and I think we should get the fair market value of those donations today, because everything is worth so much more now. And so some of the donations for baseball fields, for, different things that people really take for granted, have a value on it, and we need to put it on our website. And we need to have those numbers for certain discussions that we have. So we have that in our back pocket at all times. This is what we've done for the community, which is a lot.
Disagrees. Come on up. Good afternoon, Greg. Okay.
Well, good afternoon. Good news first. You're not going to hear very much from me this afternoon. So Fred is going to be doing most of the speaking and giving you the third year report on the work that we've been doing here for the last 3 years. So just to kind of capsulize it, I guess, about 3 years ago, the nonprofit that I started had had basically a focus of trying to help economic development in the reservation area with the focus on what we can do to support tribal member entrepreneurs. So there were a number of things that we took a look at, and one of them was the agribusiness, state of agribusiness at that time, which basically was cow-calf pair operations. A little bit of agriculture in the sense of grain or hay or different things going on, but for the most part, there wasn't a whole lot happening in terms of the agribusiness market. And so we decided to try to do something to help turn that around, to try to be a catalyst so that tribal people could have an opportunity to be able to make use of the simple things that we have here: land, water, and the labor that's available. What was missing is some of the capability, some of the know-how about how to do that. Not just in a Monsanto fashion or corporate farming kind of an arrangement, but something that was going to be beneficial and non-harmful to the environment. So understanding the history about agriculture in the reservation and homesteading opening up and farmers moving in here and the animosities that were created, quickly found out this is going to be kind of an uphill battle. So we decided to take a very broad, low-level approach to it that began with community gardens. But our focus all the way through from community gardens to looking at the idea or the prospect of us being able to have our own label, our own brand of produce, if you will, and have a market ready for available to any tribal entrepreneur that wants to put a few acres to work and to produce. That's been the goal all along, to try to get to that point. So at the end of 3 years of working all the time with Mr. Billings here, Fred Billings, he is from out of the area and has a considerable amount of expertise. And the combination of those two things made it ideal because, as you well know, if we would have tried to take somebody local and try to do something with that, it wouldn't have worked. So sometimes there's respect given to the guy who comes in from out of town. Sometimes it works just the opposite because the guy's from out of town. But anyway, we took the gamble on it and identified Fred as being a person who would work out well here. So I threw him into the lion's den on his very first visit here up in the Elmo community to see how he would do, and had some individuals lined up to talk to him, to grill him, if you will. And they gave me the thumbs up. Did the same thing down in the south end and found that Fred had the demeanor, the style, the approach that was going to work well so that the expertise can be made available, and we'd have a good shot at moving forward in the agribusiness stuff. So that is my introduction of Fred, and he's been here 2 times before, giving you annual reports. And this is a third, and we have some recommendations that we would like to talk to as well. That being said, I just got appointed to the Consumer Council at MVP, and my first meeting is at 2:30. So I'm going to have to book out a little bit early, but you're going to be in good hands with Fred. Yeah, so I'm going to just back up.
Want to talk about hopeful outcomes?
Oh, yeah. So what we're looking for at the end of this, in addition to your consideration of the recommendations about how to move forward, and please keep in mind, these recommendations are not intended to be critical of anybody or anything or any circumstance. It is just a way of saying, you know, there's some things here that need to be done in order to move forward. Okay, so please take the recommendations in that light. What what we're looking for, I guess, at the end of this is a indication from the council about whether or not the work that we've been doing over the last 3 years should continue. Whether or not the idea that we have of trying to establish and create an avenue for tribal entrepreneurs to get involved in agribusiness, if that is something that has merit and something that you would like us to pursue. We have done what we have done over the last 3 years with funding that has been secured through the nonprofit donation. Not federal funding or any grants or anything. We've secured donations to get us thus far. In order for us to be able to move forward, it's important for us to understand whether or not you believe that we're on the right track, whether or not you want us to continue to pursue this route. If you're not, then that says one thing. If you are, then it opens the doors for us to be able to go out and secure funding and to be able to continue this strategy. So that's what we're looking for.
Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Craig. And thank you, guys. Glad you were able to get out today in this weather. My back's killing me from yesterday. Do you have any written material, Greg? Just kind of trying to find anything related to your nonprofit and everything, and I don't have anything. So,
okay. The short answer to that is yes. I didn't bring any of that stuff with me, but I'd be more than happy to. In fact, I'd be more than happy to sit down with any of you on an individual or small group basis and go through everything in detail. So yeah, I will get something for you, Tom.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much.
Other question for Greg before he has to go?
I don't have to go yet, just in a few minutes.
I know. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Fred, it's all yours.
Thank you. Did you bring zucchini?
And I need to introduce Barbie.
I was about to do that. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay. Barbie is the secret weapon. That's how Fred always introduces her, and I always laughed at that and didn't come to find out, that's just true. She is the secret weapon. She has a way with people and has a way of keeping Fred in between the boundaries or focused, if you will, and work within the communities. And actually, both Fred and Barbie are a blessing to us. I firmly believe that. So not just because I took a chance and invited them in, but after 3 years, there's no doubt in my mind that they represent a blessing to the community. So with that,
Thank you. Well, I'm going to come and just kind of summarize some of the things that I've learned while I've been here. I think I've been treated, I would say this, I've been treated with extraordinary favor, and I'm very grateful for that. We have made dear friends here that we are quite confident will be lifetime friends. And so it's been fun to serve, but it's also been completely a blessing to us. And so that's the context. I have a written report that I'll forward and can be distributed, but I want to hit just a couple of the highlights that I think you might find interesting in the recommendations. The first one is 500 acres will feed the entire enrolled CSKT population, all the grain and all the vegetables and beans that they need for a year. Acres. If every enrolled tribal person had 3 non-tribal dependents, they could all be fed on 2,000 acres, which really represents 1.7% of the total irrigated farmland on the reservation. Conversation in the context of food security and food sovereignty. And in one sense, it's just 500 acres away. 0.8% of the total irrigated hay or forage acreage on the reservation. Additionally, it requires 2,600 head of cattle to provide 100% of the average U.S. meat consumption, which
per person, which is 260 pounds, for a year for every enrolled tribal person and 3 non-tribal dependents. 2,600 head, using a density rate of 7 acres per cow on non-irrigated poor rangeland. It would take 18,000 acres or 5.5% of the reservation's non-irrigated rangeland. So much potential, and I haven't discovered this because of math equations. I've discovered it because of the people who've shared their lives with us, and by having my fingers in the dirt, and having my fingers in the dirt with people from the various communities. And so ultimately, there's really a strategy to make that will result not only in being able to have more than enough to feed the people here, but to be able to extend in economic terms out to other markets, whether those are local and institutional markets like schools and local grocery chains, or whether they're regional or interstate markets. A good cow-calf operation in this area may gross $200 an acre. Yield or gross revenue from an acre of carrots is $10,500 an acre. Opens up the possibility of a cow-calf operation to just pull off 10 acres on the side or 20 acres on the side and actually do very well without putting a large investment into changing their current operation. Tremendous potential that's here. I have a few recommendations that I'd like to share with you. The first one is, as food sovereignty undertakes the Bison Springs project. So the Bison Springs project, just a little background, actually we were talking about, okay, this can happen, but the linchpin for young producers or new producers to get into the produce market is really on the packing and distribution side of the equation, because there's specialized equipment and management and skills in terms of what has to be done in order to be able to meet the products that they want to sell. And so if there were a packing shed attached to a demonstration farm, then you'd have the two things to help people understand how to do organic vegetable production on a scalable version, which is different than the garden. It's the same, but it's a different process, but it's the same exact of producing foodstuffs. If you could have a way to show people how to do it and show them that it's successful, and then provide the service that they need so that they're not having to buy the packing equipment and not having to lose their chance in a marketplace because they don't understand all the nuances of packing. Broccoli has to be packed in slush ice to be shipped anywhere, but you can't do that with lettuce or carrots. And so there's a technical component to this. So food sovereignty, when I left and we had started talking that, Mark had said, hey, we have this place, Bison Springs, we have this other place over behind Mission, that either one could be a good place for that, just pick one. And I was like, okay, well, I'll talk to Greg and that'll be. In the meantime, food sovereignty needs a revenue stream. So they said, well, we'll do that. Great, mission accomplished. But they're gonna need, the reality is that it's a complicated business. And so they're gonna need some technical assistance to be able to bring that operation into full tilt without having too many challenges, without making mistakes that can be easily avoided. So I recommend that they operate Bison Springs as a demonstration farm and training center for commercial organic vegetable products. The focus should be on developing new growers and not on competing with growers, with new growers. Because as soon as you have 50 acres of produce or 40, whatever you decide to plant, it can be, if you don't have market, discouraging to new growers if they find themselves in competition with the training farm. So I would just say, lovingly, just be careful how the implementation goes with that so it doesn't end up competitive. Second one is food sovereignty should go ahead and build the commercial vegetable packing shed at Bison Springs. It's centrally located. It will be a good revenue generator for them. It will provide the commercial inspection, grading, packaging, and shipping, both for local distribution as well as interstate distribution. Should probably develop a detailed marketing plan for sales and delivery to local, institutional, and interstate commerce. They can provide this as a service through a brokerage relationship to new growers. So a new grower can focus on growing rather than on marketing. And they can do that at a nominal but profitable rate. That also helps the customers or the buyers to know that it's being cleared through a system that has a high standard of quality. And you need that as you enter the produce business. The one thing about, if you grow grain, you can take grain and you can put it in a grain elevator for a while. Cows, you can keep them out in the field for a while, and then you have meat, you can put that in the freezer for a while. Most fresh produce doesn't work that way. It's perishable. In fact, in the industry, what we say is the best it's ever going to look is right now today. It's in a state of decay. So it has some nuances that some of the other agriculture in this area don't. I'd like to recommend that CSKT develop an incentivized investment plan for young producers to complete the demonstration farm training. And that would include access to favorable land, water rights, and specialized equipment. You have an equipment leasing arm. If that equipment leasing arm were to buy the specialized equipment that was needed, that would make it easier for young producers who want to get in the business to get a good start. The CSKT incentivize current operators by providing game fencing. Problem in the area, the number one pest is not locusts, it's deer when it comes to vegetables. But if you could provide the fencing and the fencing department could go in and install it, then a grower interested in doing this could pay for it out of the proceeds over a couple of years. And if they decided they didn't want to do it, you could just pick it up and use it at another grower's place that's interested. So I think it's a relatively low cost, low in risk way to help people get into that business without and solve their number one problem. So I think you got to go.
No, I just wanted to summarize that and make sure that make sure that this part is clear in terms of the barriers for tribal people to start being able to produce thousands of dollars per acre instead of a couple hundred. Okay, that involves moving towards produce in terms of their agricultural focus or product. That is going to require that there be processing of that produce, And that is going to be a barrier, and it is something that I don't believe that each individual entrepreneur is going to be able to do or really should do. It's not economical to have that done. There need to be processing sheds or processing facilities that are available for them to go to. And that is something that we need to focus on as a tribe to make those types of things available. At the same time, once it goes to the processing shed and gets ready to go into market, those market arrangements have to be made. Okay? So from an entrepreneur standpoint, they're going to need some equipment, and that equipment can be done collectively through kind of a co-op arrangement through sovereign leasing. They're going to need some fencing to be able to protect the produce from the game. And again, those are the doing the fencing right and doing it economically is something that we should be looking at tribal wide. Then the processing shed needs to be there, and the marketing plan needs to be there, so that our tribal member entrepreneurs would basically be focusing on what is right there on their land. The steps from there all the way to market, where it shows up in a produce section in the supermarket, will be taken care of for them. And those costs would then be shared. Instead of building it many times, it would be built once to serve many people. That's the basic economic or business development strategy behind this. And I just want to make sure that everybody is clear on that point. So that's the way we get there from here. All right.
Thank you, Greg.
You got a question?
He said it way better than me.
Yeah, just
Go ahead, Tom.
so yeah, I'm friends with Jan Tusick. You know Jan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Mission West, does a lot of what you guys are talking about, but what you're talking about is just simply focusing on fresh produce and getting it to market, not canning or processing it in the way that the shared facility in Ronan is utilized. Is that correct?
That's correct. And Jan's facility doesn't do packing, what we would call packing. She does what's called processing.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's not a duplication of what Jan does. It's actually would be supportive of. She would actually get stuff from growers,
right,
that looks like what she would get from a shipper.
Yeah.
As opposed to getting it the way she gets it now, which is very rough and very, it's not graded, it's not sized, so it helps her.
But some of the other technical assistance that they offer would be beneficial for tribal members trying to get into this, I would assume, because they offer a lot of technical assistance and funding sources and things like that. I mean, I spent a lot of time with them developing our fish processing plant at Blue Bay and trying to develop that and get that going, which we have it going. But they have a lot of great resources that we relied on. Yeah.
Jan and I are friends, and I've talked about this with Jan probably 2 years ago, maybe almost 3. So this is kind of and that's kind of been the great thing, Tom, is that we've had the chance to be here for long periods of time in the summer and interact with. In fact, I can tell you 2 years ago, distributing food for people who need it is absolutely one of the funnest things you ever get to do, right? But I'm still a business guy. And so come to the end of not last year, but the previous year, I was like, I don't care what I do. Somehow I'm selling some of this somewhere. And so Jan said, well, we're putting out the boxes soon. We'll buy something. What do you have that you could make 605 units of? And I said, we got cherry tomatoes. And so we went out, we picked all the cherry tomatoes that we needed to get 605 pints, delivered them, and we used the money from that. And that money from that bought all the seeds for all the gardens, all the community gardens for the next year. So I felt better because I got to sell something. But the point is that that whole idea of collaborating together with things that are here and things that are not here, you're spot on, Tom. Spot on. So I only have really one more recommendation, and then I'll wrap up with something I think is probably the best next step. My last recommendation may seem a little bit self-interested, but it's to continue to collaborate really with ICC and expand the role of Garden for Life in the different communities. There's some communities that don't have it yet, don't have a community garden like that could very well benefit from it. And it does help raise awareness, incubate interest, build community involvement, and provide quality training for people to produce their own food at home. And so I would say that continued collaboration probably would be helpful to the whole process, and I would recommend that it continue to the extent that that's possible. And the relationship with food sovereignty is one. I think I was one of the people who, when Dana was thinking about applying for the job, I said, apply for the job. So, you know, we have a good relationship, and I know them very well. I'm in there often, and so that's kind of fun. Do you want to? Are there any more questions about those recommendations before I get this last kind of thing? Okay.
Thank you, Greg. I think we're okay, Fred. Go ahead.
Okay. So I think kind of my last thought or recommendation is to do something we've been collecting data and experience over the last few years, but I really think it would be beneficial to develop a 5-year pro forma that in collaboration with food sovereignty, but to do a 5-year pro forma plan that includes budgets and transitions, agroeconomic development initiatives, how to deal with some of the labor requirement needs that will be there for this, how to manage that, where will that come from, how will people get involved in it, how to recruit students who are interested, what's the investment profile look like. So there's a whole part of this that really, at this particular point, needs to be fleshed out with the reasonable pro forma and plan and a budget of what needs to be done. And so I would just recommend that that would kind of be the next step, that's sooner rather than later. We have growers that want to do this. We have a couple of, do I have time for one short story? Just a real short one. So one of my favorite ones involves Barbie. I had to be out of town for about 10 days. And during that 10 days, Roger Claremont's daughter was testing, they were testing a little small, 1/4-acre pumpkin patch with sunflowers and stuff. And so, does everybody here know Roger Claremont? Okay. He's a bit of a character. He's been on a tractor a lot, so you kind of have to talk really loud when you talk to him. But anyway, he's leaning in. I'm out of town. It comes time to deliver the first big delivery of pumpkins. And he looks at Barbie and he goes, off that little row, we're going to get $650? And this is a row that's probably maybe 100 feet long, right? And Barbie goes, yeah, Roger, $650. He goes, $650 off of that little row? I hadn't made $650 off this whole field in the last 5 years. And the point is of that story is that sometimes you just have to do it. You just have to have somebody get up there and try and and give it a go. And all of a sudden, there's something new. His daughter made, I don't know, did y'all see her selling the pumpkins with the sunflowers in it down at the store? She made a ton of money just making an arrangement with sunflowers, cut the hole in the pumpkin, put it in there, and she sold them for like $50 a piece. And she scored. She sold out every single time she did it. Figure out, okay, how do we do this on a larger scale? And that's just the process. That's how I learned things, was from other growers and people. You don't really learn things, the application of things. You don't learn the theory of things, but the application of things gets lost a lot of times until it gets down to grower to grower. And then there's some real possibilities. I'm My heart and Barbie's heart is to see agriculture thrive here and to see the next generation get involved. Because right now, your average age of a producer here is about 67 or 68. And we need, and I say we because I'm a part of this thing, we need to figure out how to grab up young people and get them involved and inspire them with what's here because they can be the best stewards of this land in the next generation.
Fred? Go ahead, James.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm definitely supportive of the concept and everything, but we've yet to receive like a formal proposal or packet of information as to, what's going on. So, I have to agree with the vice chair on that, in that regard. And sorry, Greg had to leave, but that's just the main thing we need to see is some financials, some, the meat, nuts and bolts of the thing. So, definitely, our people were farmers and ranchers and forced into it. And then when we got good at it, they gutted the innards of the reservation out and said, oh, well, sell those buffalo, even though you rescued them. We don't need them no more.
Yep.
And forced the tribes, very successful, aspects of our tribal community before the reservation was opened up. And, we grabbed onto it, learned it, and were successful at it, but it wasn't good enough. So throw the Indians off the, don't be farmers and ranchers and don't be successful at it. We'll provide for you as a federal government.
They were jealous and they stole it.
Yeah, they were jealous and stole it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's true. And
jealous of the Indian people, not to cut you off or anything, but that's the main thing is we just need to see, like a proposal. Here's what the financials are. Here's where we're getting the money. Here's what we're, I guess that's kind of what we always are used to seeing. So it's not saying that you don't have that, but it'd just be nice to see that. So thank you.
So, James, I guess my question is, because I'm not familiar with the process, how does that get done? Who initiates that? Who pays for that?
Usually it's you all come up with that. You produce it. Anybody that has a business proposal for us, usually they have their own portfolio or whatever it looks like, however you want to make that look like to bring your information to us. We had recently a business that wanted to be sold, wanted us to buy it. They had a proposal. Here's what our assets are, just a basic information as to what this business is financially, what our sales are potentially going to be, those kind of things would be real helpful.
My understanding is in the operation sense that food sovereignty is that business entity that will do that for Bison Springs, not us. We are in a serving capacity and an assistance deal. We're not actually trying to start a business. I'm here to actually help people start businesses.
So maybe that's something food sovereignty needs to bring to us then. Yeah.
Go ahead, Carol.
James and Tom bring out a very good point. We need to see something that is in writing that describes exactly what you're doing. Also your credentials, and while you're at the table, you must bring some expertise to the table. And I'm sure you do. So it would be nice to just see a packet of your, what you're planning on doing. And that would come from you and Greg. And I heard Greg say he had something. He used to work here in this organization. He kind of knows how we work. So I'm surprised he didn't bring it. But it'd be nice to see something in writing.
Well, I think what we've done is we've taken the grant outline that we thought we would be doing. And we've turned that grant outline with all of its information to food sovereignty and said, here's the grant. This is what it would look like if you'd go out and get a grant to try to do this. And to try to empower them to be able to do it. We haven't taken a position yet, any position that says that we're the right people to do that. And if asked, then we're here to serve. But we're kind of in that weird space, I guess, of not really trying to do anything other than help other producers get in the business and to provide the insight as what's needed, how to overcome the obstacles. So I don't know what the best vehicle is, but we really don't ask us to. Let me say it that way.
James and then Tom.
Yeah, no, it's no disrespect to you. It's just, I don't know you, unfortunately. You know, I could believe you're a good person. I don't know that. It's not, please don't take it as a personal insult. It's just, you know, we've had, you know, I was chairman for 2 terms. I was on council, been on council for a while, not as long as Carol, but you know, we've had lots of people come through and try to sell us lots of things. And, you know, there's been a couple, I remember we took the word of them and come to find out, well, they weren't just who they said they were. And so it's just us doing our due diligence to our people, the folks that are our constituents. You know, it'd be nice to see, you know, what your track record is with other entities that you've worked with, just those things. I mean, if you're buying something for me, you're going to want to know, hey, is that a good car? Is that a good home? You're going to do that inspection, that due diligence for yourself and your family. And we have to do that as well. So don't take it as other than
No,
that.
I don't mind asking. It's just that I need a directive of what you want. So what I do, I have a nonprofit organization that is called Garden for Life. And Garden for Life is actually a global training system that's used in India, in other parts of Asia, in Africa, all over the world. It isn't a direct. There's an organization in South Africa who uses Garden for Life's program, its training, as its key economic development for small rural towns in 60 different countries. So, but that's a different role than what I kind of have here. And so I'm just trying to figure out what does that look like? Because my understanding is it's really food sovereignty that is going to take the front on this particular part. Am I off on that?
No, I think that's true. One thing I'll interject here is that demonstration gardens have actually done what was necessary. It demonstrated the kind of produce that we could produce over the last 3 years. You've got a summary of how much has been produced of all of those sorts of things. One of his first reports to the council was about squash, zucchini. But he's actually come and helped show that certain products do very well here, and in fact are quality products in the area. And yeah, his background, he developed organic gardening down in Houston and delivered it to the market at the same price as all other produce. And that's a phenomenal thing to do and be successful at it. And so he does have he probably has the market that we could utilize.
For 10 years, I was the largest certified organic vegetable grower in Texas. And I set and sold all the original organic sections in the chain stores there by doing it at conventional prices. So I've got a long background. I've built 2 farms in Algeria, North Africa, one for dairy and beef production, one for poultry, sheep. I'm an agricultural economics guy who's actually in the business. So I spent 3 years on a presidential commission on agricultural trade and export policy as an economist. So the background, I appreciate the question. I don't normally even say those things because, you know, it sort of gets lost and it doesn't. I know people with big resumes that aren't very good at implementation. And so I try to focus on getting the job done and less about things I used to do.
And so when he says that, an acre of ground can produce $10,500 worth of carrots, he knows what he's talking about. Versus, I was in the cattle, grew up in the cattle business, and 10 acres, 20 acres didn't produce that in terms of cattle. So there's a demonstration here that there is potential and opportunity in the agricultural business. And it's phenomenal to me to hear that on 500 acres, we can feed all the membership with basically enough food and calories that they need for the year. We've got 500 irrigated acres that the tribe itself owns. We've got a whole lot more than that. And when we talk about food security, and that was a big issue when we were looking at COVID and looking at the breakdown of supply lines. It's been nice to have access to good local produce. And then his Garden for Life shows you how to produce that organically with the fertilizer that you can use, and how you actually got to look at feeding the soil, whereas cattle kill the soil. I've come to understand that. That's kind of information that the demonstration gardens have provided to us.
And if you want to see what that curriculum is, it's free. You can go to www.gardenforlife.site, S-I-T-E. We just launched the new website, and I think you're gonna really like it because it's really cool. Even I think it's cool, and it's my website, and I'm like, wow, you guys did a great job. So I think you'd enjoy it.
And
So
if you actually saw what got produced on a terrible piece of ground in Hot Springs, you'd understand what our good ground could actually do. So, Tom, you wanted?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the gardens that have been in, and you got a great track record. What I'm asking for is information from Greg about his nonprofit, and then in writing what the agricultural development initiative is. You know, you guys just did a bunch of oral presentation, but I want to see it in black and white, and I want to understand that, and then what has been gathered so far to date over the last 3 years for donations, and what's going on. And I'm for every angle, trying to hit this every angle. I'm a gardener, and I used to produce almost all the food that my wife and I and our young kids ate off of a garden the size of this room. And I was wasting stuff. I mean, giving it away. It's just incredible what you can do if you have a good I guess hand to soil kind of effort. So I agree with that 100%. I just don't know what exactly. That's why I'm just trying to figure it all out. Because indeed, we'd like to have food sovereignty. I think be our lead, because it's a tribal program, to be able to produce and provide sustainability for our government, for food programs, to say if commodities go away, something like that, different things. The more we produce locally, the better off we are. My whole challenge has been how I store things this time of year and how I access it this time of year. And so I've always been after trying to utilize not only, our summertime production, but our greenhouse production we can have in the off season, and the production we could get out of our geothermal resources to heat those greenhouses. And we produce cherry tomatoes year round. And we're not just looking at a growing season that's getting longer because of climate change, but how we can utilize the resources we have to provide fresh produce year round in a setting that I think we could do.
So Tom, you're spot on that. And one of the things that we started piloting and is in this report, and over at, so we have a great relationship with forestry over in Ronan and their production system over there. And they had 3 greenhouses that they have more than that, but they had 3 big old greenhouses that they weren't doing anything with. So we got a volunteer who was interested to see if they have these metal boxes, and we said, well, let's see if we can produce in there and what all is required. Well, they put forestry, bless their heart, put They had plastic, but they put white plastic on instead of clear. Vegetables need it to be clear. But we still were able to produce 2 months past the normal season in there with no investment other than time and labor and somebody willing to do it. Where the big potential is in organic is to heat the greenhouses with compost, because compost heats to 160 degrees. So that's something nobody's doing. It's something I started doing a few years ago and started experimenting with. And that would be a deal changer, because that's not free heat. That's heat that's paying you in the next crop. And so there's some really great things, but the relationship that I've had and that ICC has had to this point has been come in and see what's needed and how to interact and do gardens, find leadership and develop some leadership, because that's what the garden class is for, is to develop leadership, and give me a chance also to build relationship and learn this area, because it's different than Texas. In fact, I think it's probably 71 degrees there today, and raining probably. But my point is that we need some direction on what you really want us to do, either from you guys directly or through food sovereignty, and what that's supposed to look like. But at this particular point, we've kind of tied it up in a bow, and we've got recommendations for you in terms of a strategy and what's needed in order to do that here on the reservation. Now the next step is, kind of to your point, James, there needs to be a plan that's a pro forma that has the rest of the information on it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm not against the whole project and all that. I'm definitely supportive of it. I'm just used to seeing black and white nuts and bolts. I mean, no offense to you, but I've just quickly been trying to find your site on, and I may have typed it in wrong, but I can't find anything about it on the internet. You know, I just quickly looked through Texas. I can't see anything or find anything. So maybe if you got a business card or something, or a brochure that has that on there that I can look up and see the things that you've done,
Sure,
that would be great and appreciated. I just don't take it personal. I'm required to ask these questions. I don't know you. I don't know your background. You know, I appreciate I appreciate all your experience from where you've been, but I don't know that. So I really need that extra, you know, the information Tom's asking, but I also kind of need just, you know,
Sure.
Who are you kind of person?
Sure.
I mean, you seem like a nice guy, but I just can't take that at face value, because I've done that in the past, and we've gotten bitten, you know, but the concept and everything that you're doing, I absolutely support.
So I'm happy. Thank you. Thank you for your support towards it.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, you know, we keep buying irrigable acres, and which is good. It's a really good investment for us, and we are improving the irrigation project to make it more efficient and to make sure that we're evaluating every drop of water we can for our natural world and for egg production. So what I always often worry about is that when I was growing up, my grandparents had a big garden, and my mom had a big garden. And so I learned how to garden, I learned how to do all that stuff. And then, of course, as a kid, I worked on all the local farms. I milked cows, I cut hay, I branded, I pulled calves, I did everything you can think of. And what I find today is that, you know, I actually took my garden in my backyard, and it's a pole barn for my recreational toys now. And it's like, okay, who's teaching people how to garden today? And that's one thing I will say about COVID. I saw people doing little garden boxes and more interested in canning, people doing their own food, because people were worried, you know, the food supply is going to get disrupted, and what are we going to do? And so there was like this reinvestment in gardening because of COVID. But I really worry about that for generations coming up that there's nobody really teaching the fine art of gardening or production like that, whether it's fruit trees or carrots or whatever. It's incredible lack of what's going on out there. I really don't know. So when I see a school that has a good ag program or, has something going on where they got a garden on the school grounds, all right, that's good. That's really a good thing. Because you know what? When I grew up in Ronan, we didn't have a garden in Ronan High School. But Ronan today has a garden. And not only that, there's pollinator flower things going on. There's all kinds of things that are really cool that I think are for our long-term sustainability. And so I think what you guys are bringing forward is another way to hit at this. And I appreciate that. But I just want to see things in black and white. I'm sorry, I just got to see some, rather than Greg's traditional oral presentation, I really want to actually see some information. So whatever you can produce would be great.
I'll be happy to send you this report. That's kind of what I was hired to do by Greg's company, is to get to this particular point. I wasn't really interviewing for a job. I have those, and I have companies that I run and so forth. So I think a lot of times people maybe come looking for something from the council. I'm actually here just to give you the report on what I found out. And if you want something, I'm happy to do whatever I need to do. But really, food sovereignty is, my understanding, is going to be the lead, and have to present you with those reports and the things that you want. Beyond that, unless there's some reason why they engage us. But otherwise, we're going to be around, and we're going to try to do some gardens again this next year. I want to encourage you guys, come out and take the course. The course is fun, and you will take home more than you can shake a stick at. And before I leave, I will get you on that website, because I was on it just a few minutes ago, so I know it's operational. It's just there's something a little glitch there.
But I do have one more technical question.
Sure.
You know the difference between the amount of water needed for an acre of carrots versus an acre of alfalfa?
I don't know the exact difference, but I will tell you this, that on the water side of this equation, vegetables are best grown with drip irrigation. And are you all familiar with the garden that's in Mission? The one right there by the side of the highway? Have y'all seen that? Okay. So you've seen it. So that entire garden was watered from a garden hose. A more effective use of water than growing produce under drip irrigation. Efficient way to use your water that there is, and you're going to get a whole lot higher value out of it than you will out of hay.
My thoughts going to the fact that we're kind of charged to utilize water more efficiently, and maybe compact money can be utilized to advertise that if you'll put this kind of water system in, that it can get paid for by the compact, and maybe promote some folks thinking about vegetables.
And I think you saw this in Hot Springs. The other practice that builds the soil is actually a mulching practice, because that slows down the evaporation. It completely stops the erosion, and actually retains the water that's in the ground, and at the same time keeps the ground from getting compacted when it does rain. So I teach 5 different reasons why you want to mulch. If you don't do anything else in your garden, you want to mulch. And it is a good thing. And so, because of it either, because that constant moisture on the leaf promotes funguses and bacteria, whereas if you just put it right in the ground where it needs to go, you don't get that. From Mine was on acreage. So I know what it feels like. So I want to thank you for your time today, for your great questions. I'm sorry that I didn't have a printed copy of this for you just yet, but I will get that done and get you a copy of what our recommendations are, kind of what our observations are. There's a section in there on motivations and values and all those other things that it's not intended to be in any way critical. It's just intended to say, hey, these are factors that affect whether or not you're successful in a business or not. And so please receive them in that way. That's all they're there for, is just to encourage. How do you get these young people involved? And that's, if you want a proposal and a strategy of how to do that and what that would look like, I would be happy if somebody asked us to take that next step, produce the 5-year pro forma, whatever you want us to do. So that's my background. Thank you all. Are there any other questions?
Anything else? Thanks, Fred.
Thank you. You all have a great afternoon. Thanks,
Barbie.
Thank you for seeing us today. We flew in for this and so we were kind of afraid that we might get, snowed out.
Are you gonna get snowed in?
Well, there's worse things than that. That would be okay. I could live with being snowed in, snowed out. But thank you for seeing us today.
Executive.
We will go out of regular into executive.
Mr. Chair.